Imagine you're a successful businesswoman who built a luxury hotel empire from nothing. You've worked blood, sweat, and tears for 5 years to create this masterpiece. One day you decide to visit your hotel unexpectedly, dressed casually just to see how your staff treats everyday guests. But upon your arrival, something shocking happens. You're not just ignored, you're publicly accused of being a thief. You're dragged out by security, humiliated in front of everyone. The reason? Your ex-boyfriend's jealous girlfriend works there now, and she has no idea you own everything she's standing on. The marble floors beneath her designer heels? Yours. The crystal chandeliers casting judgment? Yours. The security guards gripping your arms? They work for you. But here's the twist that makes your blood run cold. This wasn't an accident. Your psychotic mafia ex-boyfriend orchestrated this entire thing. He's been watching you, waiting for you, infiltrating your sanctuary piece by piece for 3 years. And the woman screaming that you're a criminal? She's just the opening move in his obsessive game to destroy everything you've built and drag you back into his dark world. That's exactly what happened to a brilliant woman named Elliot Tremwell. What would you do in that moment? How would you handle the betrayal knowing the power you hold? Would you reveal yourself immediately? Confront them? Or would you dig deeper to uncover the conspiracy? Keep watching to find out what happens next, because I promise you it's not what you think. What Elliot discovers will shock you, and the dangerous confrontation that follows will leave you on the edge of your seat. Before we dive deeper into Elliot's dangerous world, welcome to the channel. If you're drawn to stories of power, obsession, and women who refuse to be broken, you're in the right place. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Now let's see how Elliot handles the shock of being accused in her own hotel. The glass doors of the luxurious Sovereign Grand Hotel in Newark glided open as Elliot Tremwell stepped inside. She had been the proud owner of this 15-story Art Deco masterpiece for almost 5 years, but today she wanted to experience it differently. No power suit, no chauffeur, no special treatment. Just her in ripped jeans, a vintage leather jacket, and her natural curls loose around her shoulders. She wanted to see how her staff treated regular people. The lobby was breathtaking with its shimmering crystal chandeliers and polished black marble floors. The walls were adorned with gold accents, and the sweet smell of fresh lilies filled the air. Guests in expensive clothes were being greeted with warm smiles and champagne. Everything seemed perfect, elegant, exactly as she'd designed it. Until it wasn't. Elliot strolled toward the concierge desk, ready to observe how things really worked when the owner wasn't around. But before she could even reach it, she noticed her. A stunning Korean woman in a tailored black Chanel dress, standing at the concierge desk with an expression that made Elliot's stomach drop. Their eyes met across the lobby and something flickered in the woman's face. Recognition. Then something much darker. Within seconds, the woman was striding toward her, heels clicking sharply against the marble. Her voice rang out loud enough to turn every head in the lobby. Security. We have a situation here. Elliot's world tilted. What was happening? The woman's perfectly made-up face twisted with false concern as she pointed at Elliot. This woman matches the description of the suspect who stole Mrs. Vanderbilt's diamond bracelet from the penthouse suite this morning. Gasps echoed through the lobby. Guests pulled out their phones, recording. Whispers spread like wildfire. Elliot tried to speak, to explain, but the woman cut her off with venom dripping from every word. I don't care what excuse you've prepared. You don't belong here. And that's when Elliot saw it, the cold satisfaction in the woman's eyes. The territorial rage. This wasn't random. This wasn't a mistake. This was personal. As 2 security guards approached, Elliot realized with cold, creeping horror. Somehow, impossibly, this connected to him. To the man she'd escaped 3 years ago. The man she thought she'd finally left behind. Park Dong-hyun. The giant. And this woman? She was just the beginning. What do you think Elliot will do? Will she reveal who she really is right there? Will she fight back? Or will she uncover something far more sinister happening in her own hotel? Keep watching, because what happens next will blow your mind. The conspiracy runs deeper than you can imagine, and the dangerous game her ex is playing? It's only just begun. The security guards' hands on Elliot's arms weren't gentle. They marched her through the lobby like she was dangerous, like she was actually guilty of something. Around her, guests whispered and pointed, their phones held high, recording every humiliating second. A woman in a fur coat gasped dramatically. A businessman smirked. Elliot's face burned with rage and disbelief. This was her hotel. Her empire. And she was being paraded through it like a criminal. Behind her, Jiwon's heels clicked a steady, victorious rhythm. Her voice carried across the marble floors, dripping with false sympathy. I understand times are hard, truly I do. The economy has been difficult for everyone. But theft is never the answer, miss. There are programs, charities that can help people like you. People like you. The words hit like a slap. Elliot spun around, jerking free from one guard's grip. I want to speak to the general manager. Now. Jiwon's perfectly painted lips curved into a smile that never reached her eyes. I'm afraid Mr. Harrison is off-site today, handling business in Philadelphia. But as guest relations director, I have full authority in these matters. She gestured to the guards. Please, let's handle this privately. We don't want to disturb our guests further. They dragged Elliot into a small security office off the main corridor. The door clicked shut, muffling the lobby's shocked murmurs. Jiwon dismissed the guards with a wave, leaving them alone. The moment they were gone, her mask shattered. She stepped close, so close Elliot could smell her expensive perfume, and whispered in flawless Korean, "Stay away from what's mine." Elliot's blood turned to ice. This woman knew. She knew exactly who Elliot was. She knew about Donghyun. I don't know what game you're playing, Elliot said, her voice deadly calm, but I will destroy you for this. I'll have you arrested for false accusations for assault. Jiwon laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. She pulled a folded document from her designer bag and smoothed it on the desk between them. You mean this board authorization? Signed by Richard Chin himself, giving me expanded security powers to protect hotel assets and reputation. Her finger tapped the signature. Your trusted board member thought I was doing such excellent work. He trusts me completely. The betrayal cut deeper than the humiliation. Richard had been with her from the beginning. Get out of my hotel, Jiwon said softly, before I call the real police. And if you come back, I'll have you arrested for trespassing. 10 minutes later, Elliot sat in her Aston Martin, hands trembling with pure fury. She wanted to scream. She wanted to storm back inside and reveal everything. But something stopped her. This was too coordinated, too perfect. Someone had planned this. She dialed Marcus, her head of security, the only person in that building she trusted completely. Miss Tremwool. His voice came through tight with tension. Where are you? I just heard what happened. We need to talk. Something's very wrong here. I think your hotel has been compromised. I'm coming to you, Elliot started to say. Her phone buzzed with an incoming text from an unknown number. The words made her heart stop. Did you really think you could run forever? Her hands tightened on the steering wheel until her knuckles went white. 3 years. 3 years of silence, of freedom, of building a life he couldn't touch. Park Donghyun was back. And this time he wasn't playing games from the shadows. This time he'd come for her empire, her pride, everything she'd built to prove she didn't need him. The worst part. He'd already gotten inside. Elliot stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her penthouse, staring at the Hudson River's dark waters below. Manhattan's lights glittered across the water like scattered diamonds, but she saw none of it. Her mind was 3 years in the past, remembering the woman she used to be. Younger. Softer. Stupidly, desperately in love. Park Donghyun had been intoxicating in a way nothing else had ever been. Dangerous and powerful, yes, but also magnetic. He'd made her feel seen, protected, cherished. He showered her with gifts, designer clothes, jewelry, a penthouse she didn't ask for. At first it felt like a fairy tale. A handsome, wealthy man who wanted to give her the world. But fairy tales don't come with invisible chains. The protection became surveillance. The gifts became obligations. Every friend she had he found reasons to distrust. Every decision, from what she wore to where she worked, slowly became his to make. She didn't even notice the cage being built around her until she was completely trapped inside it. Leaving him had taken every ounce of courage she possessed. She'd disappeared in the middle of the night, used connections he didn't know she had, built a new identity, a new empire. She thought she'd finally escaped. The buzzer jolted her from the memories. Marcus. She let him in, and one look at his face told her the news was worse than she'd imagined. He spread documents across her dining table. Employment records, financial statements, surveillance photos. Ji-won Park was hired 6 months ago, Marcus said, his voice grim. Glowing recommendation from a consulting firm called Sterling Advisory Group. He slid another paper toward her. The firm doesn't exist. It's a shell company, registration traced back to a law office in Fort Lee that specializes in laundering money for the Korean syndicate, Elliot finished, her stomach dropping. Marcus nodded. There's more. Financial irregularities in her department. Missing funds funneled through fake vendor accounts. Luxury suppliers that don't exist. Maintenance contracts for services never performed. He pulled out a tablet, queued up a video. And Richard Chin has been attending weekly meetings here. The footage showed a restaurant exterior, Han's Palace in Fort Lee. Elliot recognized it immediately. Everyone in certain circles knew it was a front. Then she saw him. Richard Chin emerged from the restaurant's private entrance, and beside him, towering over him, was Park Dong-hyun. The giant looked exactly as she remembered. Impossibly tall, shoulders that filled his tailored suit, tattoos creeping up his neck like dark vines. His face was calm, almost serene as he spoke to Richard. That terrifying calm that meant he was completely in control. Elliot's hands trembled. She gripped the table edge. This isn't just Ji-won's jealousy, Marcus said quietly. This is systematic. He's been infiltrating your hotel for months. Using your own board member. Installing his girlfriend in a position of power. Bleeding your funds. Destroying your reputation from the inside. The question hung in the air between them before Marcus finally asked it. Why now? After 3 years of silence, what does he want? Elliot closed her eyes, bow rising in her throat. She knew the answer. She'd always known deep down that men like Dong-hyun didn't let go. Me, she whispered. He wants me back. And he was willing to destroy everything she'd built to get her. The blonde wig itched, but Elliot ignored it. She adjusted the tortoiseshell glasses perched on her nose and studied herself in the mirror. Al Thompson stared back. A corporate consultant in a charcoal pantsuit, blue contact lenses replacing her natural brown, her entire presence transformed. Even she barely recognized herself. Marcus had created the perfect cover. Al Thompson, hospitality consultant hired by an anonymous board member through a shell company to evaluate operations. Legitimate enough that no one would question it. Vague enough that Ji-won couldn't trace it back. You ready for this? Marcus asked through her earpiece. Elliot squared her shoulders. Let's get my hotel back. Check-in was smooth. The front desk clerk smiled professionally, handed over a key card, welcomed Ms. Thompson to the Sovereign Grand. But as Elliot crossed the lobby, she noticed things she'd missed during her humiliating exit. Employees clustered in corners, whispering. When she passed, conversations died. Fearful glances followed her. Something was very wrong here. Over the next 2 days she observed everything. Guest complaints handled poorly. Staff members walking on eggshells. An atmosphere of tension that hadn't existed 6 months ago. She befriended Sophia Martinez, a housekeeping supervisor with kind eyes and nervous hands who'd worked at the hotel for 8 years. Can I ask you something? Elliot said over coffee in the employee break room, keeping her voice casual. The energy here feels... Is it always like this? Sophia's cup rattled against its saucer. She glanced around, making sure they were alone. Since the new guest relations director arrived, everything changed, she whispered. Staff members who questioned her decisions got fired. Guest complaints disappear. And there's... She hesitated. There's what? A special guest. He visits Ms. Park late at night in the executive suite. We're told not to talk about it, not to acknowledge him. But I've seen him once. Sophia's hands trembled. Tall Korean man, tattoos creeping up his neck. Eyes like a shark, cold, dead. He terrifies me, Miss Thompson. Everyone who sees him is ordered to forget he was here. Elliot's blood ran cold. He'd been here. In her hotel. Walking her hallways. That night she sat in her room with her laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard. Marcus had given her access codes to the hotel's security system. She pulled up footage from Ji-won's office, watching the guest relations director make phone calls, review financial documents, her movements sharp and agitated. At 11 p.m. the feed went black. Elliot's pulse quickened. She checked the system logs, manually disabled from within the security office. Someone didn't want this recorded. She waited, barely breathing, until 2 a.m. when the feed flickered back online. Ji-won looked wrecked. Her perfect hair was disheveled, mascara smudged beneath her eyes. She looked frightened, small, nothing like the cold woman who'd had Elliot thrown out. Then Elliot saw him. Just for a moment, captured in the hallway camera before he moved out of frame. Park Dong-hyun, 6'4" and impossible to mistake, checking his watch with that terrifying calm. He adjusted his suit jacket, tattoos visible above his collar, and walked down the corridor like he owned every inch of it. Because in his twisted mind he did. The hotel was hers, but she was his. And he'd infiltrate, destroy, corrupt everything she'd built until she had nowhere left to run except back into his arms. Elliot's hands clenched into fists. Not this time. This time she'd fight back. The financial records painted a devastating picture. Elliot sat cross-legged on her hotel bed at 3 a.m., laptop screen casting blue light across her face, watching her empire bleed out in spreadsheets and bank transfers. Ji-won had been meticulous. Fake vendor accounts for cleaning services that never showed up. Maintenance contracts for work never performed. Luxury suppliers charging triple rates for linens that arrived damaged. Every dollar funneled through a maze of shell companies, eventually landing in offshore accounts Marcus traced directly to Dong-hyun's organization. $4.3 million. Gone in 6 months. At this rate, the sovereign grand would be bankrupt by summer. But the financial hemorrhaging was only half the attack. Elliot found the other half buried in review sites and complaint logs. Negative reviews from accounts created the same day. Staged incidents with planted guests, who complained loudly about everything from cold food to dirty rooms. Even a food poisoning scare last month that somehow never made it to health inspectors but destroyed 3 weeks of reservations. Everything designed to systematically destroy the hotel's 5-star reputation. To ruin her. To leave her with nothing. She had to see the executive suite, had to know what else Ji-won was hiding. Elliot slipped out of her room at dawn, took the service elevator up. The private hallway was empty, silent except for her heartbeat thundering in her ears. Then she heard heels clicking behind her. Al Thompson. Elliot froze. Turned slowly. Ji-won stood 10 feet away, head tilted, eyes narrowed with suspicion. That's an interesting name, Ji-won said, moving closer with predatory grace. Familiar. Something about your eyes, your mouth. She circled Elliot slowly. Have we met before? I don't think so. Elliot kept her voice steady, professional. I'm just here to evaluate. He told me about you. Ji-won's voice dropped to something raw, broken. The one who got away. Do you have any idea what that's like? To be with a man who's completely obsessed with someone else. She laughed bitterly. He talks about you constantly. Your strength. Your defiance. How you're the only woman who ever challenged him. Elliot's pulse raced. I don't know what you're. Stop. Ji-won's eyes glistened with tears and rage. He promised me. He said if I helped him get you back, if I destroyed everything you built, he'd finally see me. Finally love me the way he loves you. Her voice cracked. But he doesn't, does he? He never will. Because I'm not you. For a moment, Elliot saw past the villain to the victim. Another woman caught in Dong-hyun's web, manipulated by promises he'd never keep. Ji-won, he's using you. Ji-won's phone rang, shattering the moment. She answered and Elliot watched her face drain of color. Yes, I understand. She's here now. Boss. Tonight. Yes, of course. She hung up and met Elliot's eyes with something like pity. He knows you're here. He's been waiting for you to come back to your hotel, waiting to see if you'd fight for it or run again. Her voice dropped to a whisper. He's coming tonight. If I were you, I'd run far and fast. But Elliot Tremel was done running. She'd spent 3 years looking over her shoulder. 3 years building something he couldn't touch. And she'd be damned if she let him take it now. Let him come, Elliot said, ripping off the blonde wig. This ends tonight. Are you hooked yet? Drop a comment below and let me know. Are you Team Elliot fighting for her freedom, or do you understand the twisted devotion of the giant? Subscribe if you're following this dangerous game, because the confrontation you've been waiting for is coming. Now back to the story. Elliot refused to hide. Not anymore. She called Marcus, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. Install recording equipment in the underground parking garage. Audio, video, everything. And alert your federal contacts. If he's coming, we're getting him on record. Ms. Tremwell, this is dangerous. Just do it. As midnight approached, Elliot stood in the parking garage's shadows, her heart hammering against her ribs but her resolve pure steel. The concrete pillars cast long shadows under the fluorescent lights. Somewhere above, Marcus and his team monitored from the security office. Federal agents waited in unmarked vehicles on the street. At 12:17 a.m. the private elevator chimed. The doors slid open and Park Dong-hyun stepped out. 3 years dissolved in an instant. He was somehow more imposing than her memories. Taller, broader, more dangerous. The tattoos had spread up his neck to his jawline, dark ink crawling across his skin like claims of ownership. His tailored charcoal suit couldn't hide the muscle beneath, the barely contained violence. And his eyes, those dark, endless eyes, found her immediately in the shadows, as if he'd always known exactly where she was. As if he could sense her heartbeat from across the room. Elliot. His voice rolled through the garage, deep and familiar, a sound that used to make her feel safe and now made her feel trapped. You've been playing detective in your own hotel. I'm impressed. He walked toward her slowly, deliberately, each step measured and predatory. Did you really think I'd let you go? That I'd just accept you leaving? His accent thickened with emotion. I gave you 3 years. 3 years to realize that everything you built because I allowed it. Because I loved you enough to let you try. Elliot forced herself to stand her ground, even as every instinct screamed at her to run. You don't love me. You want to own me. There's a difference. Dong-hyun's laugh was bitter, almost sad. I've destroyed men for looking at you wrong. I've burned down clubs for serving you watered-down drinks. I've tracked your every move for 3 years, making sure no one hurt you, that no man came near you. He stopped inches from her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, feel the heat radiating from his body. If that's not love, what is? The worst part was the pull she felt. That toxic magnetism that once drew her in, that her body still remembered even as her mind recoiled. Her pulse quickened and she hated herself for it. I'm taking everything, he continued, his voice dropping to something intimate and terrifying. The hotel, your reputation, your options. I'll strip away every piece of this life you built until you have nothing left but me. His hand reached up, fingers hovering near her cheek without touching. Because that's where you belong, Elliot. You've always belonged with me. You're insane, she whispered. Maybe. His smile was devastating. But you're mine. And I'm taking you home. Elliot forced herself to meet his eyes, to hold that dangerous gaze. You think breaking me will make me love you? Dong-hyun reached out, his fingers brushing her cheek with unexpected gentleness that made her breath catch. I don't need you to love me, he murmured, his thumb tracing her jawline. I need you to be mine. Then he kissed her. Forceful, possessive, claiming. His hand slid to the back of her neck, pulling her closer, and for one terrible, traitorous moment Elliot felt it. The old heat, the dangerous desire that once consumed her entire world. Her body remembered him, remembered this, and she kissed him back before her mind could catch up. She shoved him away hard, gasping. Dong-hyun smiled, satisfied, knowing he'd proven his point. You still feel it. The connection we have. You can pretend all you want, build your empire, play at being free. But your body knows the truth. The only truth, Elliot said, her voice shaking with rage, is that you're going to prison. That's when Marcus emerged from the shadows, federal agents flooding in behind him. Dong-hyun's expression didn't change, didn't show surprise or fear. He'd known this was a possibility. He raised his hands calmly as agents surrounded him, weapons drawn. Park Dong-hyun, you're under arrest for extortion, embezzlement, racketeering, and conspiracy, the lead agent announced, moving forward with handcuffs. But Dong-hyun only looked at Elliot, his smile chilling. You think this ends it? I have lawyers, connections, judges on my payroll. I'll be out in 48 hours. He stepped closer despite the agent's warnings. And I know where you live. Where you eat. Where you sleep. You can't hide from me, Elliot. Not ever. As they cuffed him, the elevator chimed again. Ji-won stepped out and Elliot's blood froze. She had a gun, a small silver pistol trembling in her hands, tears streaming down her perfectly made-up face. You used me. Ji-won screamed at Dong-hyun, her voice breaking. You promised me everything. You said if I helped you, you'd finally see me, finally love me. But it was all lies. The gun swung toward Elliot. You used me to get to her. The parking garage exploded into chaos. Agents shouted, weapons drawn. Marcus dove toward Elliot, trying to shield her. But Elliot saw something in Ji-won's eyes. Not murderous intent, but devastating pain. The look of a woman who destroyed herself for a man who never saw her as anything but a tool. If he can't have you, Ji-won sobbed, the gun shaking violently, then no one will. Elliot did something that made everyone freeze. She walked toward Ji-won, hands raised, voice steady despite her racing heart. He used both of us, Elliot said quietly. He's a master at it. He finds our weaknesses, our desires, and he weaponizes them. But you don't have to let him win. You don't have to destroy yourself for a man who sees you as nothing but a tool to get what he wants. Ji-won's hands wavered, the gun dropping slightly. He promised. I know. He promised me things too. But his promises are chains, Ji-won. Pretty, golden chains. For a moment, everything hung suspended. Then Ji-won collapsed to her knees, sobbing, and the weapon clattered to the concrete. Marcus kicked it away as agents swarmed. Dong-hyun laughed as they dragged him toward the exit. This isn't over, Elliot. Not even close. The next 72 hours became a whirlwind of federal agents, lawyers, and revelations that made Elliot's head spin. Ji-won, broken and desperate for any path to redemption, accepted immunity in exchange for testimony. What she revealed made Elliot's blood run cold. Dong-hyun had recruited Ji-won 8 months ago, promising her a life of luxury, status, love, everything she'd ever wanted. All she had to do was infiltrate the Sovereign Grand, sabotage operations, and bleed the accounts dry. He'd been meticulous, patient, playing a long game designed to isolate Elliot completely. Richard Chen's betrayal cut deeper. The federal prosecutors revealed he'd been blackmailed, gambling debts to the Korean syndicate that ballooned to over $2 million. Dong-hyun had offered him a choice: help destroy Elliot's hotel, or watch his wife and daughters learn about his addiction and his debts to dangerous men. Richard was arrested at Newark Airport attempting to flee to Taiwan, his face gray with shame. But the conspiracy ran deeper than one hotel. Federal auditors traced the embezzlement network to 3 other businesses: a restaurant in Manhattan, a boutique hotel in Philadelphia, a nightclub in Brooklyn. All owned by people in Elliot's extended network. Dong-hyun had been systematically dismantling her world, cutting off potential allies, isolating her financially and emotionally. Then the media descended like vultures. Mafia Boss infiltrates luxury hotel to win back ex-girlfriend, screamed the headlines. Elliot's privacy shattered overnight. Reporters camped outside her building, her hotel. Her past relationship with Dong-hyun, something she'd buried, hidden, tried to forget, became public spectacle. But Elliot Tremwell hadn't survived this long by cowering. She gave one interview, sat across from a sympathetic journalist, and transformed the narrative. I'm not a victim, she said, looking directly into the camera. I'm a survivor who built an empire from nothing. And no one, not my ex, not his organization, not anyone, can take that from me. The clip went viral. Support poured in. She promoted Sophia to guest relations director, implemented new financial oversight protocols, and personally met with every employee to rebuild trust. Within 2 weeks, the hotel's reputation not only recovered but strengthened. Guests admired the owner who fought the mafia and won. But at night, alone in her penthouse, Elliot couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Shadows seemed darker. Every sound made her jump. Dong-hyun remained in federal custody, awaiting trial. His expensive lawyers filed motion after motion, delaying, obstructing. On day 4, a letter arrived, forwarded by his legal team. Elliot's hands trembled as she opened it. His handwriting neat and precise. This isn't over. I have friends everywhere. And I'm a patient man. When I get out, and I will, I'm coming for you. Not to destroy you. To claim you. You'll never be free of me, Elliot. Because you don't want to be. That kiss proved it. We're bound together by something darker than love and stronger than hate. Sleep well knowing I'm thinking of you. Always. Elliot burned the letter, but that night she dreamed of his hands, his voice, his kiss. And woke up hating herself for it. 3 months crawled by like wounded animals. Elliot watched Dong-hyun's trial date get pushed back again and again, his legal team filing motion after motion, burying the prosecution in paperwork and procedural delays. Each postponement felt like another thread of his control wrapping around her throat. Ji-won entered a psychiatric facility in upstate New York, her designer clothes traded for hospital scrubs, her perfect makeup stripped away to reveal the broken woman underneath. Before they took her away, she'd grabbed Elliot's hand with desperate strength and whispered, "I thought if I did what he asked, he'd see me. But he only ever saw you." The words haunted Elliot more than any threat. She threw herself into work with manic intensity. A second hotel in Philadelphia, renovation plans for a boutique property in Boston, investor meetings that stretched past midnight. Anything to keep her mind occupied, to prove she was thriving, not just surviving. But the exhaustion showed in the shadows under her eyes, the way her hands trembled when she thought no one was looking. Her therapist, a kind woman with steel-gray hair and patient eyes, told her what she already knew but couldn't accept. Trauma bonding, Dr. Chin explained, her voice gentle but firm. Your brain learned to associate intensity with intimacy, danger with desire. It's not weakness, Elliot. It's neurology. Your body betraying you in ways your mind can't control. Elliot wanted to argue, to insist she was stronger than that. But she remembered the kiss in the parking garage, the way her body had responded before her mind caught up, and shame burned through her chest. Then Marcus appeared at her office door one evening, his face grim. He posted bail. The world tilted. That's impossible. $50 million. Paid in cash through a Korean diplomatic channel. No questions asked. Marcus's jaw tightened. He's under house arrest at his Fort Lee penthouse. Ankle monitor, travel restrictions, but he's out. Elliot's hands gripped her desk until her knuckles went white. Where? The building on the Palisades. The one with the view. Across to Manhattan. Her voice came out flat, dead. She knew exactly which building. She'd noticed it 1,000 times from her own windows. The luxury high-rise directly across the Hudson, overlooking the city like a watchtower. Overlooking her. Marcus doubled her security detail immediately. Bodyguards shadowed her everywhere. Cameras were installed. Panic buttons placed in every room. But that night, standing at her floor-to-ceiling windows with the lights of the city spread before her like fallen stars, Elliot felt the invisible noose tightening around her throat. And then she saw him. A figure on a distant balcony, too far to see clearly but unmistakable in his towering height and broad shoulders. As if sensing her gaze across the dark water, he raised one hand in a slow, deliberate wave. Her phone buzzed. The text made her blood turn to ice. Nice view. I can see your bedroom from here. The windows are beautiful. Elliot's hands shook violently as she yanked the curtains closed, her breath coming in sharp gasps. Marcus was already on his way up, already suggesting relocation, safe houses, anything. No. Her voice came out stronger than she felt. I won't run again. I won't give him that power. But that night she dreamed of his hands around her throat, not squeezing but holding, possessive and gentle and terrifying all at once. His voice in her ear whispering that she belonged to him, that she always had, that running only made the chase sweeter. And when she woke in twisted sheets, pulse racing and skin fever hot, the worst part was being unable to distinguish nightmare from memory, from the twisted fantasies her traumatized mind created in the dark. The curtain stayed closed. But she could still feel his eyes on her through the fabric, across the water, patient and hungry and absolutely certain that eventually, inevitably, she would be his again. 2 weeks before trial, the monitoring device on Dong-hyun's ankle malfunctioned. A technical error that federal investigators deemed impossibly convenient. By the time marshals arrived at his Fort Lee penthouse, he was gone. Vanished like smoke, likely protected by his organization's vast network, possibly already on a private jet to Seoul where extradition would take years of legal wrangling. But Elliot knew better. He wasn't gone. He was closer than ever, circling like a predator who'd slipped his leash. She fortified everything. Security tripled at both hotels, her routes varied daily, Marcus's team stationed permanently outside her building. She stopped sleeping through the night, startling awake at every sound, her hand reaching for the panic button on her nightstand. Then the flowers started arriving. Black roses, delivered daily to her office, her apartment, her Philadelphia hotel. No cards needed, no signatures required. She knew who sent them. On the 13th day she found one lying on her car seat, despite the parking garage being locked, monitored, supposedly impenetrable. The message was crystalline. He could reach her whenever he wanted. The security was theater. The locks were suggestions. She was never truly safe because he would always find a way. That night, Elliot made a decision that horrified Marcus but felt like the only path forward. She called the federal prosecutor with a proposal that made the woman's voice go sharp with concern. "You want to use yourself as bait?" "He's watching, waiting for the perfect opportunity," Elliot said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "So I'll give him one. Controlled environment, federal agents everywhere, cameras recording everything. We end this." The trap was set for the Sovereign Grand's grand reopening gala, a celebration of survival, of triumph over adversity. Elliot would be visible on the mezzanine in her blood-red dress, seemingly alone, the perfect target for a man who couldn't resist one final confrontation. As guests arrived in glittering gowns and designer tuxedos, champagne flowing and string quartet playing, Elliot stood above it all, searching the crowd with predatory focus. Federal agents posed as waiters, bartenders, guests. Marcus watched from the security office, his team positioned at every exit. And then she saw him. Park Dong-hyun walked through the lobby like he owned it, impossibly bold in a tailored charcoal suit that hugged his massive frame. His eyes found hers instantly across the distance, and the heat in that gaze made her breath catch. Security moved, but he was faster, crossing the marble floor with terrifying purpose, taking the stairs 3 at a time, and suddenly he was there, his hand wrapping around her wrist and pulling her into a private salon before anyone could react. The door clicked shut. They were alone. "You knew I'd come," he said, his hands finding her arms, grip firm but not quite bruising. "This is it, isn't it? Your end game." Elliot forced herself to meet his gaze. "One way or another, this ends tonight." He smiled, and for one devastating moment she saw the man she'd once loved beneath the monster he'd become. "You're the only woman who's ever challenged me. Do you know how rare that is?" His thumb traced her jawline with aching gentleness. "How intoxicating." "I could leave," he continued, his voice dropping to something raw. "Disappear to Korea. Let you win. But I can't stomach the thought of you with anyone else. Of you being free of me." "Then you don't love me," Elliot whispered. "You love the idea of me. Your possession." "Maybe," he admitted. "But isn't that its own kind of devotion? I've destroyed men for looking at you. I've spent millions just to be near you. I've risked everything because I can't let you go." The door exploded inward, federal agents flooding in with weapons drawn. But Dong-hyun didn't run. He simply released Elliot, straightened his jacket and raised his hands in surrender. As they handcuffed him, he leaned close to her ear. "I'll think of you every day I'm inside. And when I get out, I'll find you again. Because this story doesn't end, Elliot. It just pauses." The Sovereign Grand gleamed like a jewel in Newark's skyline, its reputation not just restored but elevated. Elliot's face graced business magazines, the woman who defeated the Mafia and built an empire. Her third property opened in Boston to rave reviews, investors lining up with offers she could now afford to refuse. She was thriving. Finally, genuinely thriving. David Chin made her laugh over Sunday brunches, his architect's hands gentle when they held hers, his kiss sweet and uncomplicated. He never asked about her past beyond what she offered, never made her feel like a possession to be guarded. With him she could breathe. With him she was learning what healthy love felt like, steady, safe, boring in all the best ways. Therapy helped. Dr. Chin smiled proudly at their sessions, noting Elliot's progress, her ability to recognize trauma responses, to separate past from present. Time helped too. The nightmares came less frequently. The panic attacks when someone stood too close had nearly stopped. She was healing. Then the letter arrived. Federal prison postmark, forwarded through official channels. Elliot's hands trembled as she recognized the handwriting, neat, precise, achingly familiar. She almost threw it away unopened. "Almost. I heard you're seeing someone. I'm happy for you. I mean that. These months inside have given me time to think. About us, about what I did, about the cage I built around you and called it love. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe real love shouldn't be possession. Maybe it should be the courage to let go. When I get out in 4 years I won't contact you. I won't watch from across the water or send flowers or arrange coincidental meetings. I'll let you be free. This is my gift to you, Elliot. Your life unencumbered by me. Build your empire. Love your architect. Be happy. You deserve it more than anyone I've ever known. Yours in memory only, D. P.S. His name is David Chin, right? The architect from the sustainable design firm in Manhattan? He seems nice. Good family, clean background, no debts or vices. I looked into him, just to make sure he's worthy of you. He is. I approve. The letter slipped from Elliot's fingers, fluttering to her desk like a poisoned butterfly. Her breath came short and sharp, pulse racing as the implications crashed over her in waves. Even from inside maximum security, even while claiming to let her go, Dong-hyun was watching. Knowing David's full name, his firm, his background. The message was crystal clear beneath the pretty words. I'm still here. I still see you. The cage might be bigger now, but you're never truly free. She burned the letter in her fireplace that night, watching the paper curl and blacken, his words turning to ash. David called, asking about dinner plans, his voice warm and normal and safe. She told him yes, everything's fine, see you at 7. But that night, lying in David's arms in her bed, his breathing deep and even beside her, Elliot stared at the ceiling and understood a truth she tried desperately to deny. You never fully escape someone who's marked your soul. You just learn to live with the scars, to build a life around the empty spaces they left behind, to love again while knowing that somewhere in the dark they're still watching. And somewhere in a maximum security facility in Pennsylvania, Park Dong-hyun lay on his narrow bunk, staring at the ceiling of his cell, a small smile playing at his lips. He'd marked off another day on the calendar scratched into his wall. 1,460 days down. 1,495 to go. 4 years wasn't forever. 4 years was nothing to a man who'd spent 3 years tracking a ghost. 4 years was just another pause in a story that would never truly end. He closed his eyes and pictured her, Elliot in her red dress, Elliot laughing with her safe, boring architect, Elliot thinking she was finally free. The image made him smile wider. Because obsession didn't die. It didn't fade or weaken or surrender. It just waited. And Park Dong-hyun, the giant, was the most patient man alive. He had nothing but time to plan, to dream, to count down the days until he could show Elliot that some bonds couldn't be burned, couldn't be escaped, couldn't be loved away by kind men with gentle hands. Some bonds were forged in darkness and sealed with fire. And those bonds lasted forever. For years, he thought, drifting toward sleep with her name on his lips. Just 4 more years. So there you have it. Elliot's empire is secure, but is she ever truly free from Park Dong-hyun's obsession? If this story had you on the edge of your seat, smash that like button and subscribe for more dark romance stories that will consume you. Comment below and tell me, where are you watching from, and do you think Dong-hyun will really stay away when those 4 years are up?